Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. This is a Snack and Learn webinar organized by WSP. The topic today is water storage facility, climate change, impact of climate change, and experience from the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, also called GERD. I am Alem Gabriel. I'm in Houston, Texas. I'm with WSP, a technical lead or technical director. This work is a pro bono work. I worked in the involvement in the GERD for the last 8 to 7 years, and it has been my only sole source, and WSP is not responsible for the content and other presentation I'm making here today. Just to I'll give you a general overview. The presentation goes a little bit of Nile Basin and Abbay. The Blue Nile is called Abbay in Ethiopia, so I probably refer that one more often throughout the presentation. And GERD as a hydropower dam, I'll give you a general overview of the GERD also. Variation due to climate change in the Nile Basin in general, in particular in the Abbay Basin. And I'll use an example, the 2020 Sudan flood, how this kind of big projects can mitigate climate change variation. Usually it's either we get more rainfall that really cause flooding and less rainfall that really create droughts. So I'll turn on my camera now to reduce the bandwidth. As far as the project is concerned, it is location-wise. Let me put my pointer here. We are here in the US, in Houston, Texas. I mean, the project location is in Ethiopia. And once you arrive there, it's close to the Ethio-Sudan border located here. There is immediately downstream of the GERD, there is a gauging station called Alem. I'll refer it in my presentation later on also. I think study done in the 1960s really identified several locations convenient for hydropower generation in Ethiopia. I mean, since then the project was not really moving forward due to financing, and it was really started very recently. In terms of, I mean, to give you a general overview, GERD is a hydroelectric project. Currently, the coverage, electricity coverage in Ethiopia and Sudan is really indicated here, very low. Egypt has relatively a better coverage in terms of electricity. In terms of, I mean, water share, I mean, this is mostly referred in the literature. The water in the Nile is divided by Egypt and Sudan among themselves in the 1959 agreement, without really involving the other riparian countries. That has been really also a little bit the contentious issue in the negotiation, which I refer to later on in my presentation. In terms of, I mean, flow contribution, about 86% of the flow into the Nile is really come from the Ethiopian highland. The Blue Nile contributes about 49 billion cubic meter. In terms of a few historical facts, you will hear about the 1929 Anglo-Egyptian agreement, the 1959 agreement between Sudan and Egypt. There is also a CFA, try to bring all the 11 riparian countries together, because Nile is an international river and shared by 11 countries. And the GERD started in 2011. There is also a 2015 Declaration of Principles signed by the three countries, Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia. That's the only document that was signed by the three countries. In that document, it has 10 articles. It was signed in March 23rd, 2015 in Khartoum. And after that, it has, this one is only refers about the GERD, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, filling and operation. The 2010 CFA is about the entire Nile Basin, and to have some kind of commission to govern the Nile. There is no commission at this point to oversee the Nile Basin. So the negotiation continued by US and World Bank. The AU ongoing negotiation is ongoing. In general, Nile Basin and Abbay watershed, its watershed is about 174 kilometers squared. It has really very high plateaus in Ethiopia, and when it gets to the Sudan border, its elevation is close to 400 meters, and GERD is very close to the border here. This is the same uh, topographic map showing there are several cities in Ethiopia, big cities. It really ranges from Asosa to Dese, if you are familiar with Ethiopian cities. So when it gets to Sudan, it gets really flat and really very low. And once the water gets out of the bank, really it inundates the neighborhoods. This is a Nile flow at Alem, so it really varies seasonally and annually. So this is annual variation. This is the raw data taken from Dam gauging station immediately downstream of the GERD. So there are some low flow areas years in the 80s, and there are some also high flows in some years. In terms of, monthly average variation, most of the flow comes, 80% of the flow actually comes between October and September in 4 months. And this is a median flow, and it varies also from month to month. Climate change due to drought and the low of rainfall really exacerbates this variation. So this is the gist of this presentation today. In terms of, climate variability, there are several studies done. This is most of a literature search, and it's projected the mean flow variability in the Nile Basin increases due to climate change. Either it gets more flow sometimes due to temperature increases in the area and changes in the atmospheric circulation and the temperature change in the atmosphere. So global warming generally has been accepted now. So we'll see its impacts every day of our life here in various parts of the world. So Africa will be specifically affected, specifically the East African region. In terms of rainfall variability impact, most of the rain really comes from the equatorial lake here and from the highlands of Ethiopia. So it's projected, to vary significantly. Either you get more rainfall in some years, you get less rainfall. This is from the climate circulation model, CM3. This is a little bit older, but there are also latest model done by CM5 shows the same trend in terms of rainfall variation, which translate into not a 1-to-1 ratio, but to flow variation in the Abbay basin also. In terms of water storage facilities, there are a few. Aswan being the biggest, GERD under construction. There are small dams in Ethiopia, mainly for irrigation and hydroelectric in Sudan, and there is another smaller dam in Tekaz in terms of capacity. If you compare that to biggest dam, it looks like this. High Aswan Dam, built in the 60s. GERD started in 2011. I think because it's constructed recently, it benefited from technological advances in construction that really and in terms of electric power, it's the biggest. It generates about 5,150 megawatts. This probably will increase the coverage in Ethiopia by 90%. Lake Nasser, this is the level recently. We have really blessed with abundant rainfall, especially in this GERD filling period since 2020, and still Lake Nasser is full. In terms of the channel from Lake Tana in Ethiopia all the way to the Sudan border, the profile of the channel look like this, and GERD is located this one. So this makes it ideal, especially for flood control purposes before it really gets into the Sudan low-lying areas. Once the water gets out of bank, it really floods the areas, villages, farms. So this is a cross-section of the dam, so it's a little bit narrow, gorgeous. So if you store the water in this very narrow and deep gorge, so it will make it very ideal location for flood control purposes. If now the purpose of a dam is to generate hydroelectricity, as I indicated earlier. Just to give you a little bit detail, the main dam is here. There is Saddle Dam, here to prevent water going out of above 640. And you can really search and really get a number of the detail from the literature. So I won't spend a lot of time on this one. It's really roller compacted dam, and saddle dam is rock faced concrete, rock filled concrete dam. So in terms of inundation, it will inundate an area about 214 kilometer measured at the center line of the river. So the dam looks like this one. So there is a finished portion on either side, which is 640, and there is a low block area. Here I'll refer later on, especially during the 2020 flood. This low block area is around 560 meter above sea level. This is pictures taken recently. It's reached about 600. This is, in last August during the inauguration of the third filling and the inauguration of the generation electricity by the second turbine. It looked like this one, just to give you a general idea what's the dam look like. So this one is really a video to show you that the water still flows, and the amount of water really flowing with these two lower outlet is close to 120 million cubic meter per day, and this overtops the most recent information I got is by 4 feet. So there's a lot of water really flowing downstream. The dam has not stopped flow at all. In terms of the 2020 Sudan flood, Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OSHA, really put out a bulletin here just to give you an idea. Extensive damage is done in 2020, and the analysis I done, I will present the next few slides. One of the questions, this is some of the pictures, from that inundation, villages, houses, farmland, trying to really save the valuables, whatever they have. When you see this kind of human suffering, so it touches you. I live in Houston. We had our share of flooding, so I sympathize whenever I see flood anywhere in the world. In terms of peak flows, in Sudan, flooding is very, very frequent. These are the most recent, the highlight ones. The 2020 is about 11,000, 1998 about 9,000, 28,000, you name it. So these are anywhere in Sudan when the flow of the river exceeds, this number. This is my approximate number based on the channel capacity, cubic meter per center. Flooding occurs somewhere downstream. As hydrologists, we like to do some kind of analysis. This is exceedance probability analysis using the peak flows every year. The 2020 flood is right here, about 11,000, which is more than 100-year flood. So without any mitigation, if we say within the next 10 years, what the probability of really getting flood again of this magnitude in Sudan is 70%. That's really, very, very high. So one of the analysis I did was I took the rainfall data of 2020. I did some analysis whether GERD, the dam, would have really prevented or eliminated that flood or reduced that flood. And the other analysis I did was with the low block being 560, did it help? So that was the analysis I did. This is the rainfall amount from July to September 30. There is a lot of rainfall really in the watershed, up to 3,000 millimeters just within 2-3 months. So this is a wet belt section of Ethiopia. Most of the rain really fell here in the highlands of Gondar area, close to Tana here. And when really rainfall reduced or no rain in this area, meteorological drought starts here, and the consequences really very severe. In terms of, this is a time lapse from 2020, how the GERD filled in June 27 of June 2020, it looked like that. So I compare if no impoundment what's really the peak flow downstream using rainfall runoff analysis using HMS, and if with this impoundment, did it really impact? The other analysis I did was if the GERD has been fully in place, did it have prevented the flow the flooding in Sudan. So those are the two things I done. I will show my result in the coming slide. Usually, I mean, normally since it's a hydroelectric power generating design for that one, so the flood control is secondary, so it's ancillary benefit. So it depends on the storage of the dam at the onset of rainy season. The Ethiopian government put out a notice that will try to really operate the dam between 610 minimum elevation, and the other ranges between 625 and 640, which is full. So the analysis I did was using a reservoir simulation model. If you put that inflow into the GERD, and is there any enough volume to prevent the storage, contains the storage without exceeding the downstream capacity of the channel. So this is a two starting point. I mean, if the onset of the reservoir is 610 or 625, and due to the inflow, the water really in the reservoir gets higher than until it's full. This is a rule curve, theoretical rule curve. I mean, to do the simulation model, I think there are various rule curve we can imply, and the results would be, this is the inflow for 2020. It's really reached 11,000. This is a maximum it reached. Actually, this is the maximum it has been recorded in that case. This is a 1988 flow in the Nile at Eldam gauging station, and that's two peaks here because we got a lot of rain in August, then again in September. If you run this inflow and route it through the reservoir without exceeding the maximum capacity of the channel, what would be the result? That's a very simple mass balance exercise, even though the model can handle a number of aspects, power generation, upstream abstraction, things like that, the way I set it up for future runs. So this is the inflow into the reservoir. So I simulated randomly to outflow from the reservoir, not to exceed the channel capacity downstream. So the result is this. Basically, it starts 610, you have more volume. It goes up to here from June to September. And if the reservoir is high at 625, so the storage in the reservoir is not exceeding actually even 335. The maximum the GERD can store is up to 640. So without really engaging the emergency spillway and gated spillway, which is roughly around 600 meter above sea level, GERD would have really contained most of the runoff and prevented significant damage into the downstream country, Sudan. In the end, when the GERD center block in 2020 was 560 meter, I didn't demonstrate this result here, but I did a rainfall runoff model for using HMS model. So it delayed and reduced the peak by 4,000 CFS, 4,000 CFS. But if GERD has been really fully completed, fully in place and operated the way the Ethiopian government said, it would have protected Sudan from flooding from at least from the Blue Nile source. If there are other sources, it's not on the line, it will not really prevent, but it will have really significant impact in reducing flooding Sudan. This is a chronic problem in Sudan, really would have been helped. So that's all I have for this. If you have any question, we can address it. So most of you might be wondering if the GERD has this significant benefit in terms of hydropower generation, flood mitigation as ancillary. Why all this controversy? So the controversy is a little bit political, and most of the issues can be really addressed through the negotiation table, but the three parties could not really reach an agreement because of one issue specifically, because the main issue at hand was a drought. When drought comes, Egypt wants a certain guarantee to be released from GERD. The Ethiopian government said, I cannot guarantee, while I cannot guarantee the flow to you because I don't get the same kind of guarantee from God, because the amount of rainfall might vary, especially during climate change. With that, I'll stop here and address some of the questions you have.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alan, for sharing with us this wonderful project and really impressive presentation. Just to mention, you can still log your questions in the question box on the GoToWebinar platform, and we will try to read the questions in the next 10 minutes. And also, you can find in the handout box Alem's report on this project on the Sudan flooding. I will start with the first question. When was the project envisioned, started, and expected to be completed?
Yeah, thank you for that question. The project was envisioned initially in the 60s by the study from the Bureau of Reclamation. So they identified several locations for hydropower projects in the Nile by basin. And due to financing, it was not really started until 2011. This is a self-financing project by Ethiopian government, the Ethiopian peoples. No outside financing involved, and it was delayed due to several reasons, like any other mega projects, which might really come across some issues. But now it's complete. Most of I think it's about 80% completed, and all the projects will be in place, including the turbines within the next 2 years. That's the most recent information I have. It's almost the tail end of the project completion. 2 of the turbines will start generating power with a capacity of currently 540 megawatt, but the full capacity of the 2 turbines are in place is 750 megawatt, but the remaining 11 turbines will be installed, and the remaining concrete wall will be completed in the next roughly 2.5 years, hoping that no other issue arises.
Thank you. There's a question here regarding the 2 turbines generating the power in a country where only 40% of the population has access to electricity. What is the impact on access to electricity when the project is completed?
Yeah, I touched up a little bit during my presentation on that one. The 2 turbines now generate is reported 540 megawatt. That probably cover about, if you do a simple maths, a very generalized idea, I'm borrowing this calculation from a friend, about 800 million household connected, who are connected to the grid, will get power access because of these 2 turbines. When the project is completed, all the turbines can generate power. Of course, not all of them really run at the same time throughout the year, but with some plant factor and few of the turbine running, and it will really cover, the coverage will be increased from 40% to 90% in the country. Also, there is a plan to probably export and connect to the East African grid. There is also another advantage of really having a grid connection to the rest of the region, not only Ethiopia, Kenya, Djibouti, Sudan, even including Egypt.
Thank you. Next question is, how did you measure the sediment yield?
Sediment yield. The sediment, there is in any watershed, there is sediment generated because of the runoff. So the sediment really washed from the 174 kilometer square area before the GERD. It really went to the neighboring country, Sudan, and they have issues of sedimentation in their canals and their reservoirs, and they have to deseal all the time. So one of the advantage of having a GERD a dam upstream is most of the sediment really will be captured there. And there is a significant, I don't have a number on top of my head right now, how much sediment is really generated and transported, but it's significant. You can visualize it in the sediment concentrations of watershed. So one of the advantages, since the sediment is going to be trapped in the reservoir, there is additional ancillary benefit to downstream countries in Sudan, especially.
Thank you. Another question about the sediment. Is your analysis considered all the losses from evaporation and loss of water depth from sediment?
Yeah, this is a very short duration analysis, so I neglected the evaporation, the evap, because The model I ran is only for about a month, so it's relatively cool, but evaporation loss are very minor. But I counted the storage in the river, in the reservoir, due to the damming of the low block up to 560. As far as sediment analysis concerned, I haven't really done any sediment analysis on my analysis because sediment deposition during that period of time within a month is really not that significant in terms of, storage loss. That's a very long-term effect.
Thank you. A question about climate change. Does the climate change in the region has more impact where the agricultural system depends mainly on rainfall?
Yes, because you don't have any fallback position or water storage facilities in the region. Most of the region, especially in the Blue Nile Basin, is rain-fed. When the rain comes, you have bountiful harvest. When the rain didn't come or didn't start on time, then you have significant issues in terms of, the rain-fed agriculture farming. So that's why small water storage facilities to supplement the rain-fed agriculture in the region is really needed. But this requires a very wide discussion between the riparian countries, because especially Egypt, they have fears that most of the water will be utilized in the upstream riparian countries, and their water share will be affected. So that's this discussion and understanding. Right now, the water is divided among Sudan and Egypt. The upstream riparian countries are also putting development projects which really needed water. Population pressure and climate change, all these are factors really creating some kind of conflict, but those conflicts could be resolved with negotiation discussions, especially if there is a commission or an entity to listen these disputes. Nile Basin currently does not have any kind of commission or organized body that really address these issues.
Thank you. I will take the last question. We have additional questions that will be answered directly later on by Alem via email. The last question is, can your work be replicated in other projects in Ethiopia, for example, GEB, or maybe I'm not pronouncing the name correctly, to learn more about the consequences of the environmental and social impacts?
Yeah, absolutely. What I did was a rainfall runoff simulation model that can be done in any of the watershed. The software I used are very tested, and yes, absolutely, they can be used in other. In terms of replication, means Blue Nile Basin or Abbay is entirely different than the other river basins. The result may not be the same, but taking the watershed characteristics of that particular, whether it could be Awash or other river basins, yes, that can be used for other river basins also.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Alem, for sharing with us this fantastic project. I appreciate everyone's time. You can follow up directly with Alem via the contact details shown on the screen. And that's it. We will wrap up the webinar today. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you.